The dust swirled in tiny cyclones as the wagon wheels churned the dry earth, taking with them the last of Josephine Parker's hope. She stood motionless on the porch of what had once been her family home, watching as her mother, father, and 3 younger siblings disappeared over the horizon. They were heading west to California, a promise of gold and new beginnings that had captured her father's imagination ever since the mines in this part of Colorado had begun to dry up. But Josephine wasn't going with them. At 22, she had made the painful choice to stay behind when her childhood sweetheart, William, had promised to return and marry her. That was before the telegram arrived yesterday, informing her that William had found another bride in Denver. The tears had dried on her cheeks, leaving salty trails that tightened her skin in the afternoon sun. The house behind her was empty now, sold to the bank to finance her family's journey. By tomorrow, she would need to be gone. With no family, no fiancé, and now no home, Josephine felt as though the earth itself had cracked beneath her feet. "Miss, you all right there?" the voice startled her. Josephine turned to find a man on horseback watching her from the edge of the property. He sat tall in his saddle, the brim of his hat pulled low against the sun. His horse, a sturdy Palomino, shifted restlessly beneath him. "I'm fine," she answered automatically, though nothing could have been further from the truth. The rider dismounted with the fluid grace of someone who'd spent his life in the saddle. As he approached, Josephine noticed his eyes keen and blue as a summer sky, set in a face weathered by sun and wind. He wasn't handsome in the conventional sense, but there was something striking about his features, something honest. "Samuel Irwin," he said, touching the brim of his hat. "Folks call me Sam. Couldn't help but notice you standing here watching that wagon pull away." "Josephine Parker," she replied, brushing a strand of auburn hair from her face. "And yes, that was my family heading to California." Sam glanced at the empty house behind her. "And you're not joining them?" "No," she said simply, not wanting to share the full extent of her misfortune with a stranger. He seemed to read something in her expression, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Got plans, then?" Josephine's laugh was brittle. "None whatsoever, Mr. Irwin." Sam was quiet for a moment, studying her face. Then he turned and pointed eastward, where the land stretched out in rolling hills dotted with pine and aspen groves. "Look east, Miss Parker. That's where I build new beginnings." Josephine followed his gaze, confused. "I don't understand." "I have land there, good land. I'm building a ranch and I need help." His voice was matter-of-fact, but his eyes were kind. "I lost my wife 2 winters ago, left me with more work than I can handle and a 5-year-old daughter who needs looking after." Josephine felt her guard rise. "Mr. Irwin, if you're proposing some sort of arrangement, I'm offering you a job," Sam said quickly. "Room and board plus fair wages. My daughter Emily needs a woman's guidance and I need someone to manage the household while I tend to the cattle." He paused. "It's respectable work, Miss Parker, and you'd have your own quarters in the house." Josephine hesitated. Her options were painfully limited. She could try to find work in town, but positions for unmarried women were scarce and often came with unwanted advances. She could attempt to follow her family, but she had barely enough money for a day's travel, let alone the journey to California. "Why would you offer this to a stranger?" she asked suspiciously. Sam's expression softened slightly. "Because Emily asked God to send someone to help us, and here you are, needing help yourself." He shrugged. "Seems like an answer for both of us." There was something in his straightforward manner that made Josephine want to trust him, and what choice did she really have? "I accept your offer, Mr. Irwin," she said finally, "but I want to be clear about my position. I am not looking for a husband." Sam nodded, a small smile lifting the corner of his mouth. "Understood, Miss Parker, neither am I, neither are you what?" "Looking for a husband," he replied with a twinkle in his eye. Despite everything, Josephine found herself smiling. "I'll need tonight to gather my things." "I'll return at first light," Sam said, touching his hat again before mounting his horse. "We've got a good day's ride ahead of us." As he rode away, Josephine turned once more to look down the road where her family had disappeared. Then she looked east, where this stranger had promised new beginnings. Neither direction offered certainty, but at least one of them offered possibility. The morning dawned clear and cool. the kind of spring day that promised warmth by noon. Josephine had spent the night packing her few belongings and writing a letter to her family, explaining her decision and giving them the location of the Irwin ranch in case they wished to correspond. She left the letter with Mrs. Thornton at the general store, who promised to post it on the next mail coach. True to his word, Sam arrived as the sun was beginning to crest the horizon. He had brought a second horse, a gentle mare with a white blaze down her face. "This is Maple," Sam said, helping Josephine secure her trunk to the saddle. "She's steady and patient, should be an easy ride for you." "Thank you," Josephine said, patting the horse's neck. "But I should tell you, Mr. Irwin, I haven't ridden much since I was a girl." "You'll remember," he assured her. "And please call me Sam. If we're going to be living under the same roof, we might as well use our Christian names." Josephine nodded, though the idea of such familiarity with a man she'd just met felt strange. "Then you must call me Josephine." Once her belongings were secured, Sam helped her mount, his hands strong and sure around her waist as he lifted her onto the saddle. The touch was brief and professional, but Josephine felt a small flutter of unease. It had been a long time since any man besides William had been so close to her. They rode east as the sun climbed higher in the sky. Sam was quiet for much of the journey, speaking only to point out landmarks or to ask if she needed to rest. Josephine was grateful for the silence. It gave her time to absorb the enormity of the change she was making. By midday, her muscles were aching from the unaccustomed riding, but she said nothing, determined not to appear weak. "We'll stop here for a spell," Sam announced, guiding his horse toward a stand of cottonwood trees near a small creek. "Rest the horses and ourselves." As he helped her dismount, Josephine's legs nearly buckled beneath her. Sam's arm shot out to steady her, his expression concerned. "You should have said something if you were struggling," he admonished gently. "No shame in being saddle sore when you're not used to riding." "I didn't want to slow us down," Josephine admitted, wincing as she tried to straighten her stiff legs. Sam shook his head. "Pushing too hard only leads to injuries. Then you'd really slow us down." He gestured toward the creek. "Walk it off a bit while I see to the horses. The movement will help, even if it doesn't feel like it just now." Josephine did as he suggested, walking awkwardly along the creek bank while Sam unsaddled the horses and led them to water. The pain in her muscles gradually eased as she moved, and when she returned to where Sam was laying out a simple meal of bread, cheese, and dried apple slices, she was able to sit without grimacing. "Tell me about your daughter," Josephine said as they ate, realizing she knew very little about the child she would be caring for. Sam's face softened immediately. "Emily is something special, smart as a whip and curious about everything. Has her mother's eyes green as spring leaves and her spirit too, stubborn when she sets her mind to something." His voice held a mixture of pride and wistfulness. "She'll be 6 come July. And your wife?" Josephine asked hesitantly, "if you don't mind my asking." Sam was quiet for a moment. "Rebecca, she took ill with fever 2 winters ago. Doctor from town did what he could, but..." He trailed off, his gaze distant. "She was everything to us." "I'm sorry," Josephine said softly. Sam nodded his acknowledgement. "Been just Emily and me since then. Mrs. Holloway from the neighboring farm helps when she can, but she's getting on in years herself. Emily needs someone steady." He looked at Josephine directly. "She needs what I can't give her on my own." The honesty in his voice touched Josephine. This was a man who recognized his limitations and was willing to seek help, a rare quality in her experience. "What about you?" Sam asked, changing the subject. "Why didn't you go west with your family?" Josephine hesitated, but decided there was little point in hiding the truth. "I was engaged to be married to a man named William. We'd been sweethearts since we were 16. He went to Denver 6 months ago to secure work before our wedding." She swallowed hard. "Yesterday I received word that he's married someone else." Sam's expression darkened. "That's a contemptible thing for a man to do." "Yes, well," Josephine said, trying to keep her voice light. "Apparently the banker's daughter was a more advantageous match than a miner's daughter." "His loss," Sam said simply, and there was something in the way he said it that made Josephine feel momentarily less foolish for having believed in William's promises. They finished their meal in companionable silence, then continued eastward. By late afternoon, the landscape had changed subtly, the hills more pronounced, with stands of pine and spruce dotting the countryside. They crested a rise and Sam reined in his horse. "There it is," he said, pointing to the valley below. Josephine followed his gesture and saw a modest homestead nestled against the backdrop of a larger hill. A two-story house with a wide porch stood alongside a barn and several smaller outbuildings. Fenced pastures stretched to the east, where a small herd of cattle grazed. It was nowhere near as grand as some of the ranches she had heard about, but there was a solidity to it that spoke of careful planning and hard work. "It's lovely," she said sincerely. Sam nodded, a hint of pride in his expression. "Still a work in progress. The house needs a woman's touch." Rebecca had plans for gardens and such, he shrugged. "I've focused on what I know: cattle and horses." As they rode down into the valley, a small figure burst from the house and ran toward them, blonde hair streaming behind her like a banner. "Papa, Papa." The little girl's voice carried clearly in the still air. Sam dismounted in one fluid motion and knelt to catch his daughter as she flung herself into his arms. He lifted her high, spinning her around once before setting her down. "There's my girl," he said, ruffling her hair affectionately. "Were you good for Mrs. Holloway?" "Yes, Papa. She let me help make biscuits this morning." Emily's attention shifted to Josephine, her green eyes, just as Sam had described, wide with curiosity. "Who's that, Papa?" Sam beckoned Josephine forward. "This is Miss Parker. She's going to be staying with us and helping around the house." Josephine dismounted carefully, her muscles protesting, and approached the little girl. She crouched down to eye level, offering her hand. "You can call me Josephine if you like. I'm very pleased to meet you, Emily." Emily studied her for a moment, then took her hand solemnly. "Are you going to be my new mama?" The question caught Josephine off guard. She glanced up at Sam, who looked equally startled. "No, sweetheart," Josephine said gently. "I'm here to help you and your papa. To cook and clean and perhaps teach you some things." Emily considered this. "Like what things?" "Well, I'm quite good at sewing and reading, and I know some mathematics as well. What would you like to learn?" Emily's face brightened. "Can you teach me to make a doll, Mrs. Holloway says I'm too fidgety for sewing." Josephine smiled. "I think we can manage that. I made dolls for my sisters when they were about your age." "You have sisters?" Emily asked, her interest piqued. "3 sisters and a brother, all younger than me. They've gone to California with my parents." "Why didn't you go with them?" Emily's directness was refreshing, if uncomfortable. "Emily," Sam interjected, "that's enough questions for now. Miss Parker Josephine has had a long journey. Let's get her settled in first." An older woman appeared on the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. "Samuel Irwin, is that you finally? I was beginning to think you'd forgotten the way home." "Never, Mrs. Holloway," Sam called back, leading the horses toward the house. "Just took a bit longer than I expected, Mrs. Holloway was a stout woman with iron gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, but her eyes were kind as she assessed Josephine. "So this is the help you went to find. Well, come in, come in. You look about done in, my dear." Josephine followed her into the house, Emily skipping alongside her, chattering about the family of rabbits she'd discovered near the garden patch. The interior of the house was plain but clean, with solid furniture and simple furnishings. It was clear that little had been done in terms of decoration since Rebecca's passing. Mrs. Holloway showed Josephine to a bedroom on the 2nd floor. It was a good-sized room with a window overlooking the pastures to the east. A bed, dresser, and small writing desk comprised the furniture, with a braided rug on the wooden floor. "This was the guest room," Mrs. Holloway explained. "Samuel had me freshen it up before he went to town. Bathrooms at the end of the hall, it's a proper one too, with a pump that brings water right inside. Samuel put it in for Rebecca when she was carrying Emily, said she shouldn't have to go outside in the cold when she was in that condition." The older woman's expression softened. "He was a good husband to her." "It sounds like it," Josephine agreed, setting her carpetbag on the bed. Mrs. Holloway lingered in the doorway. "He's a good man, Samuel. Works himself too hard trying to make this place what Rebecca dreamed it could be. Doesn't take proper care of himself." She fixed Josephine with a penetrating stare. "Emily needs a mother, but Samuel needs someone to remind him he's more than just Emily's father and a rancher." Before Josephine could respond to this rather pointed comment, Mrs. Holloway continued, "I've left a stew simmering for supper. Biscuits are in the warming oven. I best be getting home before my arthritis tells me it's going to rain." She patted Josephine's arm. "You've got your work cut out for you, my dear, but I think you might be just what they need." After Mrs. Holloway departed, Josephine spent a few minutes unpacking her essential items. She changed out of her dusty traveling clothes into a simple blue dress, washed her face and hands in the basin of water someone had thoughtfully provided, and went downstairs to see about supper. She found Emily setting the table under Sam's guidance. They both looked up when she entered, and Josephine was struck by the tableau they presented father and daughter, so clearly devoted to each other, yet with an empty space between them that Rebecca had once filled. "I was just coming to see if you needed help with the meal," Josephine said. "Mrs. Holloway left us well provided for," Sam replied, "but perhaps you'd like to check the stew? Emily and I aren't the best judges of seasoning." Josephine nodded and moved to the stove, lifting the lid of the large pot. The aroma of beef, carrots, and herbs rose in a fragrant cloud. She stirred it gently, tasted a small spoonful, and added a pinch of salt. "Perfect," she announced. "Shall we eat?" Supper was a pleasant affair. Emily dominated the conversation, eager to tell her father about everything that had happened during his brief absence. Sam listened attentively, asking questions and laughing at her enthusiastic descriptions. Josephine watched their interaction, feeling both touched by their bond and acutely aware of her outsider status. After the meal, when Emily had been tucked into bed with a promise from Josephine to begin doll-making lessons the next day, Sam invited her to join him on the porch. The evening air was cool, with a chorus of night insects providing a soothing backdrop. "I want to thank you for coming," Sam said, his voice low. "I know it couldn't have been an easy decision, especially given your circumstances." "You're the one who took a chance on a stranger," Josephine pointed out. "I should be thanking you." Sam smiled slightly. "Maybe we both needed a leap of faith." He glanced at her. "I want you to know something. What I said about this being a job with fair wages, that stands. But I also want you to feel that this is your home for as long as you wish it to be." Josephine was touched by his sincerity. "Thank you. I'll do my best to earn my place here." "I have no doubts about that." He paused. "Emily seems taken with you already. She's a delightful child." "You've done well with her." Sam's expression turned wistful. "I've done my best, but there are things a girl needs her mother for, things I don't know how to teach her." "I'm not trying to replace her mother," Josephine said softly. "I wouldn't presume to." "I know that," Sam assured her. "And I'm not looking to replace Rebecca. But Emily deserves a full life with all the lessons and love a child should have." He looked out at the darkened landscape. "We all deserve that chance." They sat in silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. Josephine found herself stealing glances at Sam's profile, struck by the quiet strength he projected. Here was a man who had faced loss and continued forward, not for his own sake but for his daughter's. It was a kind of courage she could admire. "It's getting late," Sam said finally, rising from his chair. "Morning comes early on a ranch." Josephine nodded and stood as well. "Good night then, Mr. Sam," he smiled at her correction. "Good night, Josephine, welcome home." As she climbed the stairs to her room, Josephine wondered at the strange turn her life had taken. Yesterday, she had been abandoned and bereft, watching her family disappear into the distance. Tonight, she was in a stranger's home, preparing to start a new life. It wasn't the future she had planned, but perhaps, she thought as she gazed out her window at the star-filled sky, it might eventually become the future she needed. The first rays of dawn were filtering through the window when Josephine awoke the next morning. For a disorienting moment, she didn't recognize her surroundings, but then the events of the previous day came flooding back. She rose quickly, dressing in a practical brown skirt and white blouse, and pinned her hair in a simple knot at the nape of her neck. The house was quiet as she made her way downstairs, but when she entered the kitchen, she found Sam already there, stoking the fire in the cook stove. "Good morning," he said, straightening. "Wasn't sure when you'd be up. Early riser back home." "Yes," Josephine replied, moving to the pantry to assess its contents. "My mother believed idle hands were the devil's workshop. We were always up before the sun." Sam nodded approvingly. Same here, though I can't claim to be much of a cook. We've been getting by on simple fare. Josephine surveyed the pantry with a critical eye. It was well stocked with basics: flour, sugar, cornmeal, beans, and preserves, but lacking in fresher ingredients. Is there a vegetable garden? Rebecca started one behind the house, Sam said. I've kept it going as best I can, but it's not what it was. There are some early greens coming up now, though. I'll check it after breakfast, Josephine decided. Speaking of which, would flapjacks be acceptable this morning? Sam's face brightened. More than acceptable. It's been a while since we've had anything fancier than porridge. By the time Emily came downstairs, rubbing sleep from her eyes, Josephine had a stack of golden flapjacks waiting, along with some preserved blackberry syrup she'd found in the pantry. Are those pancakes? Emily asked, her eyes widening. They are indeed, Josephine confirmed, setting a plate in front of her. Your father tells me they're a favorite of yours. Emily looked at her father questioningly. Mrs. Holloway makes them for your birthday, Sam explained, winking at Josephine. But I thought perhaps we could celebrate Miss Josephine's arrival with a special breakfast. Emily nodded solemnly before digging in with enthusiasm. Sam caught Josephine's eye over his daughter's head, his expression grateful. It was a small thing, pancakes, but Josephine understood that it represented something larger, a touch of joy in a house that had known too much sorrow. After breakfast, Sam explained the daily routine. I'll be out with the cattle most days. We've got about 50 head now, looking to expand come fall. The barn needs some work. That's my project for the afternoons when the heat gets too much for the livestock. And what are Emily's responsibilities? Josephine asked. She had always believed that children should contribute to the household in age-appropriate ways. She feeds the chickens in the morning and collects the eggs, Sam said. And she's in charge of making sure the barn cats get their milk. Other than that, I've been letting her be a child. Josephine nodded. That seems appropriate. Perhaps we could add some simple lessons in the afternoons, reading and numbers along with the sewing she's interested in. I'd be grateful for that, Sam said. Rebecca started teaching her letters, but I haven't done as well with that as I should. Once Sam had headed out to the pastures, Josephine turned her attention to the house. It was clean but Spartan, with little in the way of homely touches. The furniture was solid and well made, but there were no cushions on the chairs, no curtains at the windows, no pictures on the walls except for a daguerreotype of a young woman that Josephine assumed was Rebecca. Would you like to show me the garden? She asked Emily, who had been watching her with curious eyes. The girl nodded eagerly and led Josephine through the back door to a fenced plot behind the house. The garden showed signs of care. The soil had been recently turned, and neat rows of seedlings were pushing up through the earth, but it was also clear that it lacked a knowledgeable hand. Weeds competed with the vegetable plants, and the layout wasn't as efficient as it could have been. Papa tries, Emily said, seeming to sense Josephine's assessment, but Mama was the one who knew about plants. Well, I know a bit about gardening, Josephine said, kneeling to pull a weed from among the carrot seedlings. Perhaps you'd like to help me make it beautiful again. Emily's face lit up. Could we plant flowers too? Mama loved flowers. I don't see why not. A few flowers never hurt. A vegetable garden. They attract bees to pollinate the plants. What's pollinate? Emily asked, crouching beside her. And so Josephine's first lesson began right there in the garden, explaining how plants grew and reproduced. Emily was an attentive student, her questions showing a quick intelligence that Josephine found engaging. By midday, they had weeded 2 full rows and made plans for adding marigolds and zinnias along the fence. The days fell into a rhythm more quickly than Josephine had expected. She rose early to prepare breakfast for the household, then saw Sam off to his work while she and Emily tackled the domestic chores. The mornings were for practical tasks: cleaning, baking, mending clothes, and tending the garden. After the midday meal, while Emily rested, Josephine had time to herself, which she often spent reading one of the few books in the house or writing letters to her family. The afternoons were devoted to Emily's education, formal lessons in reading and arithmetic, interspersed with more enjoyable activities like sewing and singing. Sam usually returned as the sun was beginning to set, tired but satisfied with his day's work. After supper, the three of them would sit on the porch if the weather was fair, or by the fire if it wasn't. Sam would tell stories of his younger days or explain his plans for the ranch, while Emily practiced her reading or worked on the doll Josephine was teaching her to make. These quiet evenings became Josephine's favorite part of the day, a time when the house felt most like a home. As spring turned to summer, Josephine found herself thinking less and less about William and her abandoned future. The ache of betrayal was still there, but it was dulled by the satisfaction of her new purpose. Emily had blossomed under her care, showing a particular aptitude for reading and a growing confidence in her sewing skills. The house, too, had undergone a transformation. Josephine had sewn curtains for the windows, fashioned cushions for the chairs, and added small touches that softened the formerly stark interior. One evening in late June, as they sat on the porch watching a spectacular sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Sam turned to Josephine with an unexpected request. "The 4th of July celebration is coming up in town," he said. "There's a picnic and dancing, fireworks after dark. Emily's been asking if we could attend." "That sounds lovely," Josephine replied, not understanding why he seemed hesitant. "I was hoping you might accompany us," Sam continued. "It would be Emily's first real social event since Rebecca passed. I thought having you there might make it easier for her." Josephine glanced at Emily, who was watching a family of rabbits at the edge of the garden. "Of course I'll come, but won't people talk? A single woman living in your household." Sam frowned slightly. "You're Emily's teacher and housekeeper. It's a respectable position." "Yes, but small towns often gossip about less." Josephine had seen how quickly reputations could be tarnished in her own community. "Let them talk," Sam said dismissively. "We know the truth of it." But there was something in his expression, a flicker of uncertainty perhaps, that made Josephine wonder if there might be another reason for his invitation. She quickly pushed the thought aside. Sam had been nothing but proper in their interactions, treating her with respect and maintaining a polite distance. If there had been moments when she caught him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher, or times when their hands brushed accidentally, and she felt an unexpected warmth spread through her, she attributed it to her own emotional vulnerability after William's betrayal. "Then I would be happy to join you both," she said, turning her attention back to the sunset. Emily, overhearing the last part of their conversation, abandoned her rabbit watching to join them. "Are we really going to the celebration, with fireworks and everything?" "Yes, sweetheart," Sam confirmed, pulling her onto his lap. "And Miss Josephine is coming with us." Emily clapped her hands in delight. "Can I wear my blue dress, the one Mama made me?" A shadow crossed Sam's face at the mention of Rebecca, but he nodded. "If it still fits you." "You've grown like a weed this spring. Miss Josephine can fix it if it's too small," Emily declared confidently. "She can fix anything." Sam's eyes met Josephine's over his daughter's head. "She certainly seems to," he said softly. The town of Eastridge was a small but prosperous community about an hour's ride from the Irwin ranch. On the morning of the 4th, they set out in the wagon Sam had polished for the occasion. Emily, true to her wish, wore her blue dress, which Josephine had indeed needed to let out at the seams. Her blonde hair was braided and tied with a matching ribbon, making her look older than her nearly 6 years. Josephine had agonized over her own appearance, finally settling on a green dress that complemented her auburn hair. It was one of the few good dresses she had brought with her, saved for special occasions. Sam, too, had made an effort, wearing a clean white shirt with his best trousers and a vest she had never seen before. "You look nice," he commented as he helped her into the wagon, his eyes taking in her appearance with evident appreciation. "Thank you," Josephine replied, feeling a warmth in her cheeks that had nothing to do with the summer sun. "You clean up rather well yourself." Sam's smile was quick and genuine. "Don't get used to it. Tomorrow it's back to dust and cow manure." The town square was decorated with bunting and flags, with tables set up under the shade of large oak trees. A platform had been erected at one end for speeches, and later for the musicians who would play for dancing. Children ran about playing games of tag and catch, while their parents visited with neighbors they might not have seen since the last community gathering. As they made their way through the crowd, Josephine was acutely aware of the curious glances directed their way. She had not yet met any of the townspeople, having remained at the ranch since her arrival. Sam nodded to acquaintances, occasionally stopping to introduce Josephine as Miss Parker, Emily's teacher, a description that was technically accurate if somewhat incomplete. They had just finished greeting the town doctor and his wife when a well-dressed woman approached, her expression one of studied concern. "Samuel Irwin," she said, extending a gloved hand. "It's been an age since we've seen you in town, and this must be little Emily, though not so little anymore." "Mrs. Clayton," Sam acknowledged, taking her hand briefly. "Yes, Emily's growing faster than I can keep up with." Mrs. Clayton turned her attention to Josephine, her eyes sharp with curiosity. "And who might this be?" "Josephine Parker," Sam said. "She's been living at the ranch since April, teaching Emily and helping with the household." "Living at the ranch," Mrs. Clayton repeated, raising an eyebrow. "How modern of you, Samuel." The implication in her tone was unmistakable. Before Sam could respond, Josephine stepped forward with a polite smile. "It's a perfectly conventional arrangement, Mrs. Clayton. I have my own quarters, and my primary responsibility is Emily's education. Mr. Irwin has been kind enough to provide me with a position when I found myself in difficult circumstances." Mrs. Clayton seemed taken aback by Josephine's direct address. "I see. Well, it's fortunate for Samuel that he found someone willing to take on such responsibilities. Since poor Rebecca's passing, there's been talk of how a man alone can't properly raise a girl child." "Mrs. Clayton," Sam said, his voice tight, "I appreciate your concern, but I believe they're about to start the children's races. Emily's been looking forward to participating." Of course," Mrs. Clayton said, waving a hand dismissively. "Don't let me keep you, but do bring Miss Parker by the Ladies' Aid Society sometime. We're always looking for new members." With that, she moved on to her next target, leaving an uncomfortable silence in her wake. "I apologize for that," Sam said quietly as they moved toward the field where the children's activities were being organized. "Mrs. Clayton considers herself the moral compass of Eastridge. Every town has one," Josephine replied, trying to keep her tone light. "In mine, it was Mrs. Benson, who somehow managed to know everyone's business before they did themselves." Sam's expression eased somewhat. "Well, don't let her spoil the day. The worst she can do is talk, and as I said before, we know the truth of our situation." Yet as the day progressed, Josephine became increasingly aware of the undercurrents of speculation that followed them. Some of the townspeople were warm and welcoming, particularly the families who lived nearest to the Irwin Ranch and knew Sam well. Others, however, kept their distance, exchanging whispers behind raised hands. By the time the picnic dinner was served, Josephine was feeling distinctly uncomfortable. She sat with Sam and Emily at one of the long tables, trying to focus on the child's excited chatter about the races she had run, coming in second in one, third in another, rather than the sidelong glances from those around them. "Miss Josephine, aren't you hungry?" Emily asked, noticing that Josephine had barely touched her food. "Just saving room for the pie contest later," Josephine assured her with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Sam was watching her with concern. "Everything all right?" he asked in a low voice, leaning closer so Emily wouldn't hear. Josephine hesitated, then decided honesty was best. "I'm not sure it was wise for me to come today. My presence seems to be causing talk." Sam's jaw tightened. "You have as much right to enjoy the celebration as anyone else." "Perhaps, but I don't want to create difficulties for you in the community. These are people you have to do business with, neighbors you need to rely on." Before Sam could respond, a shadow fell across the table. They looked up to see a tall, lean man in an expensive suit standing over them, his expression one of cool amusement. "Samuel Irwin," the man said, his voice carrying a note of condescension. "I was beginning to think you'd become a hermit out there on that patch of land you call a ranch." Sam rose slowly, his posture stiffening. "Jacob Russell, didn't expect to see you here. Thought these country gatherings were beneath your notice." Russell smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Oh, I like to check in on the local color from time to time, keeps me connected to the common folk. His gaze shifted to Josephine. And who's this lovely lady? Don't tell me you've already replaced poor Rebecca. Josephine felt Sam tense beside her. This is Miss Parker, he said, his voice carefully controlled. She's Emily's teacher. Is that what they're calling it these days? Russell's smirk made the innuendo clear. Before Sam could respond, and from the darkening of his expression, Josephine feared his response would be physical. She stood and faced Russell directly. Mr. Russell, I don't believe we've been properly introduced, so allow me to clarify our arrangement. I am employed by Mr. Irwin to educate his daughter and manage his household. It is a position of responsibility and trust. Now, if you'll excuse us, we were enjoying a family meal. Russell seemed taken aback by her direct challenge, but recovered quickly. Family, how interesting. I wasn't aware that Samuel had remarried. She meant Emily and me, Sam said through gritted teeth. And I think it's time you moved on, Russell. Of course, Russell said, raising his hands in a mock gesture of peace. Enjoy your arrangement. With a final smirk, he walked away. Sam sat back down, his face tight with anger. I apologize for that, he said to Josephine. Jacob Russell owns the bank in town. He's had his eye on my land for years, thinks it would make a fine addition to his own holdings. He's not above trying to provoke me into doing something foolish. Why does he want your land specifically? Josephine asked, curious despite her discomfort. It sits on the best water source in the area, Sam explained. The creek that runs through our property never runs dry, even in the worst droughts. That makes it valuable. He sighed. But enough about Russell. Don't let him ruin your day. Josephine tried to take his advice, but as the afternoon wore on, she found it increasingly difficult to ignore the speculative glances and whispered comments. By the time the dancing began after sundown, she was ready to suggest they return home, fireworks or no. But then Emily, who had been playing with some of the local children, ran up to them with shining eyes. Papa, Miss Josephine, they're starting the dancing. Can we join in? Sam looked at Josephine questioningly. What do you think? One dance before we head home. Despite her discomfort, Josephine couldn't bear to disappoint Emily. One dance sounds perfect. The musicians had struck up a lively tune and couples were forming sets for a country dance. Sam took Josephine's hand and led her onto the makeshift dance floor, with Emily skipping alongside them. They joined a set with 3 other couples, including, to Josephine's relief, the friendly doctor and his wife. As the dance began, Josephine found herself caught up in the movement and music. Sam was a surprisingly good dancer, guiding her through the steps with a sure hand. When the pattern of the dance brought them together, his eyes met hers with a warmth that made her momentarily forget the watchful gazes of the townspeople. You dance well, he said as they circled each other. My father insisted all his daughters learn, Josephine replied. He said it was an essential social skill. Smart man, your father. The dance separated them again, but each time they came back together, Josephine felt a growing connection that both excited and frightened her. This was dangerous territory. She was an employee in his household, dependent on his goodwill for her livelihood and shelter, and she had sworn off romantic entanglements after William's betrayal. Yet when Sam's hand rested lightly at her waist, or when their fingers intertwined during a turn, she couldn't deny the flutter of her heart. As the dance ended, Sam kept hold of her hand a moment longer than necessary. Thank you, he said softly. It's been a long time since I've danced. Before Josephine could respond, Emily tugged at her skirt. Can we see the fireworks now? Mr. Thompson said they're setting up by the river. Sam checked his pocket watch. It'll be a bit before they start, but we should find a good spot. He looked at Josephine. Unless you'd rather head home. Part of her wanted to say yes, to retreat from the scrutiny and speculation, but the hopeful expression on Emily's face decided her. No, we should stay for the fireworks. It's a special occasion after all. They found a place on a grassy hill overlooking the river, where other families were already gathering in anticipation. Emily sat between them, her excitement palpable as she chattered about the colors she hoped to see. As darkness fell completely, the first rocket screamed into the sky and burst into a shower of red and gold. Emily gasped in delight, her face illuminated by the fleeting light. Sam's eyes, however, were on Josephine, watching her reaction to the spectacle. When she turned and caught his gaze, he didn't look away. In that moment, with colorful explosions lighting the sky above them, something shifted between them, an acknowledgement of feelings that had been growing beneath the surface of their daily interactions. The ride back to the ranch was quiet, Emily having fallen asleep almost as soon as they set out. She was curled against Josephine's side, her head resting in her lap. Sam drove steadily, occasionally glancing over at them with an expression that made Josephine's heart beat faster. "She's had a full day," Josephine said softly, stroking Emily's hair. Sam nodded. "She'll sleep well tonight." He paused. "Thank you for coming today. It meant a lot to her, and to me." "Despite the talk, the assumptions, people will talk regardless," Sam said with a shrug. "Always have, always will. What matters is what we know to be true." Josephine was silent for a moment, considering his words. "And what is the truth, Sam, about us, I mean?" The question hung between them, loaded with unspoken possibilities. Sam kept his eyes on the road, but his hands tightened on the reins. "The truth is that you came into our lives when we needed you most," he said finally. "You've brought light back into my home, order to our days, and joy to my daughter. That's the truth I care about." It wasn't a declaration of love, but it was an acknowledgement of her importance in their lives. For now, Josephine decided, that was enough. When they reached the ranch, Sam carried the still sleeping Emily into the house and up to her bedroom. Josephine followed, helping to remove the child's shoes and dress without waking her fully. As they tucked her in together, their hands met briefly over the blanket. Sam didn't pull away immediately, and neither did Josephine. "Good night, Emily," Josephine whispered, bending to kiss the girl's forehead. "Sweet dreams." They left the room quietly, pausing in the hallway outside. The house was dark and still around them, creating a sense of intimacy in the narrow space. "I should let you get some rest," Sam said, his voice low. "It's been a long day." "Yes," Josephine agreed, but neither of them moved. She could feel the warmth of his presence in the darkness, sense his uncertainty that matched her own. "Josephine," he began, then hesitated. "I want you to know that I respect the position you're in. I would never take advantage of your dependency on this job, on this home." "I know that," she said softly. "You've been nothing but honorable." Sam took a deep breath. "What I'm trying to say, poorly, is that my feelings for you have grown beyond what I expected when I offered you this position. But I don't want you to feel obligated in any way or uncomfortable in your own home." Josephine's heart quickened at his admission. "And what if my feelings have grown as well?" she asked, finding courage in the darkness. "What then?" she felt rather than saw him move closer, his hand finding hers in the shadows. "Then perhaps we should allow ourselves time to explore those feelings. Slowly, with care for Emily's sake as well as our own." "I think that would be wise," Josephine agreed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not ready for, I mean after William." "I understand," Sam assured her. "Rebecca has been gone 2 years now, but there are days when the loss still feels fresh. We both need time." He raised her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. It was a small gesture, almost courtly in its restraint, yet it sent a shiver of awareness through Josephine that was unlike anything she had felt with William. "Good night, Josephine," Sam said, releasing her hand reluctantly. "Good night, Sam," she replied, and turned toward her room, feeling as though something momentous had just occurred in the quiet darkness of the hallway. Summer unfolded in a tapestry of golden days and warm evenings. The garden flourished under Josephine's care, providing fresh vegetables for their table and flowers for the house. Emily celebrated her 6th birthday with a special dinner and a doll's tea set that Sam had ordered from Denver. The ranch prospered as well, with the cattle growing fat on the lush summer grass, and 2 new foals born to the mares Sam kept for breeding through it all. Josephine and Sam's relationship evolved with a careful deliberateness. There were no grand declarations or passionate embraces, but rather a growing closeness expressed in small moments. Their hands touching as they passed the bread at dinner, shared smiles over Emily's antics, quiet conversations on the porch after the child was asleep. Sam began seeking Josephine's opinion on ranch matters, while she found herself including him more in Emily's education, creating a partnership that extended beyond their initial arrangement. Mrs. Holloway, who still visited occasionally to help with larger household tasks, observed their growing attachment with obvious approval. Never seen Samuel smile so much since before Rebecca passed, she commented to Josephine one day as they preserved the summer peaches. Does my heart good to see it. He's a good man, Josephine said simply, focusing on the fruit in her hands to hide her blush. That he is, the older woman agreed, and you're good for him and for Emily. Sometimes the Lord works in mysterious ways, bringing people together when they least expect it. Josephine thought about this later as she walked to the creek to gather watercress for the evening meal. Her life had taken such an unexpected turn. If William hadn't betrayed her, if her family hadn't decided to go west, if Sam hadn't happened to ride by as she stood alone watching them leave. So many chance events had led her here, to this place where she was finding a happiness she hadn't thought possible after her broken engagement. She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice the rider approaching until he was almost upon her. Looking up with a start, she was surprised to see Jacob Russell astride an expensive-looking bay horse. "Miss Parker, isn't it?" he said, touching the brim of his hat with false politeness. "Quite a coincidence running into you out here." Josephine doubted it was coincidence at all. Russell's ranch bordered Sam's land to the south, and he'd likely been watching for an opportunity to catch her alone. "Mr. Russell," she acknowledged coolly. "I'm afraid I'm rather busy at the moment." "Oh, I won't keep you long," Russell said, dismounting despite her obvious reluctance. "I just thought we might have a little chat, away from Irwin's influence." Josephine took a step back, maintaining distance between them. "I can't imagine what we would have to discuss." Russell's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Perhaps your future, Miss Parker." "Your real future, not the temporary arrangement you've found yourself in." "My arrangement with Mr. Irwin suits me quite well, thank you." "For now, perhaps," Russell conceded. "But surely a woman of your obvious refinement and education aspires to more than being a glorified housekeeper on a struggling ranch, especially when that ranch is likely to change hands in the near future." Josephine frowned. "What do you mean?" Russell looked smug. "Irwin hasn't told you." "His loan with my bank comes due in 3 months. Given the current state of his operation, I doubt very much he'll be able to meet his obligations." "I don't believe you," Josephine said firmly, though a seed of doubt had been planted. Sam had never mentioned financial troubles, but then, why would he? She was his employee, not his confidante, despite their growing closeness. "Believe what you like," Russell said with a shrug, "but I'd start considering your options if I were you. When I acquire Irwin's land, and I will acquire it, I won't be continuing his staffing arrangements. If that's all, Mr. Russell, I really must get back to the house." Josephine turned to leave, but Russell stepped into her path. "I could offer you a position," he said, his voice lowering suggestively. "A much more comfortable one than what Irwin provides. My house in town is quite grand, and I find myself in need of companionship." The implication was unmistakable, and Josephine felt a surge of anger. "Mr. Russell, I suggest you move aside and allow me to pass. Whatever arrangement you're proposing, I have no interest in it." Russell's expression hardened. "You're making a mistake, Miss Parker. When Irwin loses everything, where will you go? Back to your family who left you behind. Or perhaps you're counting on becoming the second Mrs. Irwin before the bank forecloses." Before Josephine could respond, another voice cut through the air, cold and dangerous. "I believe the lady asked you to let her pass, Russell." Sam stood a few yards away, his rifle held casually but unmistakably at the ready. His expression was one Josephine had never seen before, hard and implacable, with none of the gentleness she had come to associate with him. Russell stepped back, though his smirk remained in place. "Irwin. Always the gallant rescuer. I was just having a friendly conversation with Miss Parker about future possibilities. Threatening my employee and trespassing on my land isn't what I'd call friendly," Sam said evenly. "Now mount up and ride back to your own property before I decide to demonstrate exactly how unwelcome you are here." For a moment, it seemed Russell might argue further, but something in Sam's stance must have convinced him of the futility. With deliberate slowness, he returned to his horse and mounted. "Think about what I said, Miss Parker," he called as he turned his horse southward. 3 months isn't much time to secure your future. They watched in silence as he rode away. When he was out of sight, Sam lowered his rifle and turned to Josephine, his expression softening with concern. Are you all right? Did he hurt you? No, I'm fine, Josephine assured him, though she was shaken by the encounter. Just surprised, I didn't hear him approach. Sam's jaw tightened. Russell's always been skilled at sneaking up where he's not wanted. He hesitated. What did he say to you? Josephine hesitated, unsure if she should mention Russell's claims about the loan. He suggested that my position here was temporary, that I should consider other options. Other options, Sam repeated, his voice flat. Let me guess, he offered you a place in his household. Something like that, Josephine acknowledged. I declined, of course. Sam nodded, but there was a distracted quality to his expression that concerned Josephine. Sam, she said gently, is there something you haven't told me about the ranch's finances? His eyes met hers, a flicker of surprise crossing his features before he sighed heavily. So that's what he was really after, trying to create doubt, division. He ran a hand through his hair. There is a loan coming due, yes, but it's not as dire as Russell made it sound. I've been working with another bank in the next county arranging refinancing. Russell doesn't know that yet. Why didn't you tell me? Josephine asked, hurt despite herself. I thought we were. I thought we had begun to trust each other. Sam's expression softened. We have. But this was a business matter, and I didn't want to worry you with it. You have enough responsibilities without adding my financial concerns to your load. Sam, Josephine said firmly, if we are to have any kind of future together, you need to understand that I don't want to be shielded from difficulties. I want to be a true partner, not someone you protect from reality. The words were out before she could consider their implications. A future together. They had been moving cautiously toward something deeper than friendship, but neither had explicitly mentioned a shared future until now. Sam was silent for a long moment, his eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her heart race. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his serious features. A true partner, he repeated. I like the sound of that. He closed the distance between them, setting his rifle carefully against a tree before taking both her hands in his. Josephine Parker, you are the most remarkable woman I have ever known, apart from my Rebecca. You came into our lives when we most needed someone, and you've brought joy and order where there was only duty and routine. He took a deep breath. I find myself falling in love with you, and it both thrills and terrifies me. Josephine felt tears prick at her eyes. Oh, Sam, she whispered. I've been fighting my feelings for you, telling myself it was too soon, that I was still healing from William's betrayal. But the truth is, I started falling in love with you that first evening on the porch when you welcomed me home. Sam raised one hand to cup her cheek, his touch gentle. May I kiss you, Josephine? I've wanted to for so long, but I didn't want to presume. In answer, Josephine rose on tiptoe and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was tender and questioning at first, then deepening as Sam pulled her closer. It was nothing like the few chaste kisses she had shared with William. This was a man's kiss, confident and passionate, yet still restrained enough to respect her relative innocence. When they finally broke apart, both a little breathless, Sam rested his forehead against hers. Well, he said with a smile in his voice, that was worth waiting for. Josephine laughed softly, feeling lighter than she had in months. Indeed it was. They walked back to the house hand in hand, the watercress forgotten. As they approached, Emily came running from the barn where she had been helping one of the ranch hands feed the horses. Papa, Miss Josephine. Where have you been? I've been looking everywhere. Sam scooped her up, swinging her into the air before settling her on his hip. Just down by the creek, sweetheart. Miss Josephine and I needed to have an important talk. Emily looked between them, her green eyes suddenly serious. About what? Sam glanced at Josephine, a question in his expression. She nodded slightly, giving him permission to proceed however he thought best. Well, Sam said carefully, about how much we care for each other, and how our family might change in the future. Emily's brow furrowed. Change how? Miss Josephine might become more than just your teacher someday, Sam explained. She might become part of our family permanently. How would you feel about that? Emily considered this for a long moment, her expression thoughtful beyond her years. Would she be my new mama then? Josephine stepped forward, taking Emily's small hand in hers. "I would never try to replace your mama, Emily. She will always be your real mother, but I would be honored to be a second mother to you, to love you and care for you in my own way." Emily seemed to accept this distinction. "Would you still teach me to sew and read?" "Of course." "And would you still make pancakes on special days?" Josephine smiled. "Absolutely." Emily nodded decisively. "Then I think it would be nice if you stayed forever." She paused, then added with the directness of childhood, "And Papa smiles more when you're around. He used to be sad a lot." Sam hugged his daughter close, his eyes meeting Josephine's over Emily's head. "That's because Miss Josephine makes me very happy, just as you do." The following weeks were filled with a new sweetness, as Josephine and Sam cautiously allowed their relationship to deepen. They were careful to maintain propriety, especially when Emily was present. But there were stolen kisses in the kitchen when she was occupied elsewhere, and quiet conversations late into the evening after she was asleep. Sam began courting Josephine properly, bringing her wildflowers he found while out checking the herd or small gifts he purchased on his trips to town. The matter of the bank loan remained a concern, but true to his word, Sam now included Josephine in his planning. Together they reviewed the ranch's finances, considering ways to increase revenue and decrease expenses. Josephine suggested selling preserves and baked goods in town, using the abundance from their garden, while Sam decided to accelerate his breeding program, focusing on horses that were in demand for both work and pleasure riding. By late August, with the loan refinancing secured through the bank in the next county, Sam felt confident enough to propose formally. It wasn't an elaborate affair, just the two of them walking by the creek at sunset, Emily having been entrusted to Mrs. Holloway for the evening. "My Rebecca used to say that sometimes the heart finds its way home even when the map has been lost," Sam said as they stood watching the water flow past. "When she died, I thought I'd lost my map forever. Then you came along, standing on that porch, looking so lost yourself." He turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "I don't have a fancy ring to offer you. The refinancing took most of our available funds, and I wanted to be honest with you about our situation. The ranch is secure, but we won't be wealthy for some time, if ever." "I don't need wealth," Josephine assured him. "I've lived without it all my life," Sam smiled. "Nevertheless, a woman deserves some token when a man asks for her hand." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small carved wooden box. Opening it, he revealed a simple gold band with a small pearl. "This was my mother's ring. My father gave it to me before he passed, said I should save it for when I found love again." Josephine felt tears welling in her eyes as Sam knelt before her, the ring held between his fingers. "Josephine Parker, will you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife, Emily's mother, and my partner in all things?" "Yes," Josephine whispered, her voice catching. "Yes, with all my heart." As Sam slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to seal their engagement with a kiss, Josephine thought of that day months ago when she had stood watching her family disappear into the distance. How could she have known then that her greatest loss would lead to her greatest joy? That a stranger's kindness would become the foundation of a new life, a new love. They were married in early October, when the aspen leaves had turned to gold and the air held the first hint of winter. It was a small ceremony in the town church, with Emily as their only attendant, proudly scattering flower petals down the aisle before them. Mrs. Holloway and a few of the neighboring ranchers and their wives made up the congregation, along with the minister and his family. Jacob Russell was noticeably absent, having been pointedly not invited. After the ceremony, they held a modest reception at the ranch, with tables set up in the yard and lanterns hung from the trees. The women from neighboring farms had contributed dishes, creating a feast that rivaled any fancy catered affair. There was music from a local fiddler and his friends, dancing on a wooden platform Sam had constructed for the occasion, and laughter that seemed to chase away the gathering shadows of evening. As the celebration continued around them, Sam led Josephine away from the noise, toward the eastern edge of their property where they could see the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "Happy, Mrs. Irwin?" he asked, his arm around her waist. "Completely," Josephine assured him, leaning into his embrace. Though I think Emily might be even happier. She's been telling everyone who will listen that she has a real family again. Sam's expression softened at the mention of his daughter. You've given her back something I couldn't provide on my own. For that alone, I would love you. But not only for that, I hope, Josephine teased gently. No, not only for that, Sam agreed, turning her to face him. I love you for your strength, your kindness, your intelligence. For the way you face challenges without flinching, for how you've made our house a home again. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. I love you for 1,000 reasons, and I'll spend our lifetime discovering 1,000 more. As they kissed beneath the emerging stars, Josephine felt a sense of completion, of rightness. The path that had led her here had been marked by loss and betrayal, but it had ultimately brought her to where she was meant to be. She thought of Sam's words on that first day. Look east, that's where I build new beginnings. He had been right, though neither of them could have known then just how profound that new beginning would be. Later, as they danced together under the lantern light, Emily came running up to them, her face flushed with excitement. Mama, she said, the words still new on her lips but gaining confidence with each use, Mrs. Holloway says there's going to be cake soon. Is there now? Josephine said, smiling down at her. Well, we mustn't keep cake waiting. As Emily skipped ahead to rejoin the celebration, Sam squeezed Josephine's hand. She called you Mama without hesitating that time. Yes, Josephine said softly, it's a precious gift, her trust. One you've earned, Sam assured her, just as you've earned mine. The following spring brought new life to the Irwin ranch. The cattle had calved successfully, adding to their herd. The mare Maple, now Josephine's personal mount, delivered a beautiful foal with her same gentle temperament. The garden, expanded over the winter with Sam's help, burst into bloom with both vegetables and the flowers Josephine had planted in Rebecca's memory. And in late April, almost exactly a year after Josephine had first arrived at the ranch, she gave birth to a son, Samuel James Irwin, named for his father and Josephine's own father. He was a sturdy child with a shock of dark hair and eyes that promised to be as blue as Sam's. Emily took to her role as big sister with enthusiasm, helping Josephine whenever she could and proudly showing the baby off to visitors. He's my brother, she would announce with the air of someone sharing a magnificent secret. Mama says I'm the best helper she could have. Life fell into a new rhythm, more challenging with a baby to care for, but also richer and fuller. Josephine continued Emily's lessons, now with young Samuel often sleeping in a basket nearby. Sam worked from dawn until dusk expanding their operations, but always made time for his family in the evenings. One summer evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Emily playing with her doll nearby and baby Samuel sleeping in Josephine's arms, Sam turned to his wife with a thoughtful expression. I got a letter from town today, he said. Jacob Russell's selling his holdings and moving east. Seems banking in a growing territory isn't as profitable as he'd hoped. I can't say I'm sorry to hear it, Josephine admitted, though I suppose we owe him a debt of gratitude in a way. Sam raised an eyebrow. How so? If he hadn't been so determined to acquire your land, you might not have fought so hard to keep it. And if not for that loan coming due, we might have continued dancing around our feelings for much longer. Sam chuckled. That's a generous way of looking at it. But you're right, sometimes our greatest challenges lead to our greatest blessings. He reached over to touch Samuel's tiny hand, marveling as the baby instinctively grasped his finger. Speaking of blessings, have I told you today how grateful I am for you, for our family? You might have mentioned it, Josephine teased gently, but I never tire of hearing it. Sam leaned across and kissed her softly. I love you, Josephine Irwin. Thank you for staying that day, for looking east when I asked you to, for believing in new beginnings. As the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Josephine thought about the strange and wonderful journey that had brought her here. From heartbreak and abandonment to love and family in the span of a year. From watching her family ride away to creating a new family of her own. I love you too, she whispered, resting her head on Sam's shoulder. And I will always be grateful for new beginnings.